So we're going to take a look at this flour sack animation scene and point out a few issues and tips and tricks here to show you how the animation can be approached differently, how it can be better, and some of the good things as well about this scene. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out and I'm just going to look at this animation as a whole. It is about 300 frames long. I'm going to extend my counter. That's about 200 frames. Let's see. Yes, it's about there. I'm going to extend this a little bit out that way. There we go. And just kind of look at the animation. So here, I'm going to look at the path of action first of all. Let's look at it from the side. Always kind of move around and look at your animation from different angles. Don't get too stuck at looking at it from one angle because there's all kinds of things going on. It's 3D, so you want to look at this from different angles. And there used to be a tree here that he bounced off of, and we're just going to I'm going to move past that. I'm just going to look at some of the basic animation stuff that's going on here. So one of the things I want to do is I want to point out that the as he's moving, you're using this main mover, which is this circle here, to move his whole body around, and that's not necessarily wrong. It's just one way to approach your animation, and it may not be appropriate for all things animation. It does kind of work good for certain things, but it also makes certain things difficult. So one thing I want to look at is his line of action is that he's kind of slipping here. He lands on the ground here to take a jump, and he continues to move forward. See how he appears to be moving forward, and he takes off slow and then he takes off fast. Okay, now let's just look at that. I'm gonna grab that mover here, and let's just look at the motion here, and we're going to use a tool that will kind of show you what's going on, and that is your curve editor, and that's in Window. Animation editors, it's actually graph editor. Sometimes it's called the curve editor. This is the graph editor, and this is a visual representation of the movement in XYZ axes and rotation axes, and you can separate these out. You can look at the x-axis. He's not moving in X, which is side to side. He is moving in Z, which is the forward motion, which is this blue arrow here. And he's also moving in Y, which is up and down. So let's just take a look here and see kind of what's going on. And there's that little jump there, and you can see that little jump is indicated by a little kind of bump in the curve. And you can see what's going on. You can also, if you select that keyframe and hit shift, you can adjust the value. You can also in the curve editor adjust the time, so you can move the how long or how short this jump is. So he can come up fast, and oops, let's just undo that, and he can come out slow. Oops, let's undo that. I want to hit shift, that'll lock it to that axis. So let's see, he's coming up and he's coming down slow. But that's not necessarily what we want. Again, I just wanted to show you just how the graph editor works, and we can get more into the graph editor and its finer points and subtleties later. Another thing to look at is that, look here, we have keyframes kind of all over the place. We have keyframes on the graph editor, we have X, Y, and Z, and things like that. And sometimes it's good to keep the keyframes uniform and not move them around, at least at this very early stage. It's good to keep them sort of all together. And I'm just moving through keyframes there. Okay, so that's sort of the that's the graph editor in short. Something we can also do is look at sort of the path. So I'm going to look here and I'm going to show you how he is kind of taking off in Z, which is the forward. And I'm just going to isolate the translate Z and show you what is actually going on. I'm going to do Y as well. So Y is the up down. I'm going to select both of those at the same time. We can see them simultaneously and kind of look and see what's going on. So he's on the ground, he's staying kind of still, he's still moving forward. See how he's winding up, but he's kind of taking off and he's moving forward there. And it might be a good idea to maybe hold that. So if he lands here, let's put a keyframe. So you got keyframes kind of all over the place here, and I'm going to line them up a little bit. And I'm going to go into the timeline, and I'm going to consolidate some of these keyframes here. And you can do that by selecting the keyframe, and you can move them together, and you can actually move them in the timeline. So I'm aligning these keyframes here, just like that. And we have all kinds of keyframes all over the place. So I'm going to just put those together. Let's put these together here. So those are together. He's not really doing any X motion in here. Oops. Select that. And kind of do that. Let's just move this one like that. No, let's not do that one. Let's kind of keep that together. You can also delete keyframes. Sometimes you just don't need them. But what I'm feeling is that there is a keyframe that needs to be here. And I'm going to press S. And that'll make a keyframe on all the channels. And I'm going to, oops, let's don't show this message again. I hate that. Let's just go here, and I'm going to go into the Z, which is the forward motion, and I'm going to adjust the value flat. So when it's flat like that, he's not really moving. So he's landing about here. I'm going to move that a little over this way. And he's going to jump up a little later there. I'm going to move that value down. And you know what? It's right here where he starts to take off. And I'm feeling that these keyframes here need to be closer to the previous keyframes. So he starts to take off right at that point there. And he's going to take off pretty hard, so I'm going to adjust the tangent like that. And I'm going to break it. Let's just make it linear. So I'm making a linear tangent. Oops. And let's move that a little that way. And there we have it. And now he's jumping at a sharper rate, and the curve will denote like an ease out. So let's now take a look at this jump. I'm just going to scroll through it. I'm going to minimize that. So he's jumping, he stays in this place pretty much. There's some adjustment that needs to happen, and then he starts to take off. He hits the tree, bounces up, and lands. There we go. Now, just going to look at the land here for a second, and this is pretty good. He's doing some. There's some weight here. He's coming down, and he's squashing, and then he recoils like that. You could probably do a little more with that, and I'm going to select this little doohickey here, which is underneath the floor plan, and you can do some. So he lands. You got some good stretch there. He's not going to start to squash until he hits. So I'm going to make a keyframe there. Remember, I have this little square here selected, which doesn't move his feet. It moves his body, but it keeps his feet on the ground. I'm going to keyframe that, press S. And then go to the next frame. I'm going to squash him. I'm going to keep squashing him. And then recoil him up. Boom. So we have a little bit more weight here. Notice how that weight is overlapped when he lands.